What I got, you can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sand. And right now, I'm feeling like 100 grand.
You are listening to Inspired Insider with your host, Dr. Jeremy Wise.
Dr. Jeremy Wise here, founder of InspiredInsider.com, where I talk with inspirational entrepreneurs and leaders. Today is no different. I have Susan MacNicol, and she is the founder of Strategic Creative and Marketing, which is scmarketinginc.com. And Susan, before I formally introduce you, I always like to point out other episodes people should check out of the podcast. We were just talking about an amazing person, show, Todd Taskey. He runs Potomac Business Capital. He has the podcast, Second Bite Podcast. And actually, he's kind of like meets agency owner, meets private equity, and helps agencies sell their business. And he really pairs them up. And sometimes he calls it second bite because sometimes these agencies make more on the second bite than they do on the first because they sell to private equity and then private equity sells again and they make more on the second bite than they do when they first sold it. So it's really cool. He's got some amazing agency owners on his show. Check it out. Also, another one to check out is Jason Swank. I had him on twice. So that's actually how Susan and I know each other. He talks about how he built up his agency to 8 figures and sold it. And then that he's, second one was about how he's acquiring agencies, how they value it, how they approach it. So check that episode out as well. And more episodes on InspiredInsider.com. And this episode is brought to you by Rise 25. And at Rise 25, we help businesses give to and connect to their dream 100 relationships and partnerships. And how do we do that? We actually help you run your podcast. We're an easy button for a company to launch and run your podcast. We do strategy, accountability, and the full execution and production of a show. We call ourselves kind of the magic elves that work in the background to make sure everything happens. And, for me, the number one thing in my life is relationships. I'm always looking at ways to give to my best relationships. And I've found no better way over the past decade than the profile of people and companies I admire and share with the world what they're working on. So if you've thought about podcasting, you should. If you have questions, go to rise25.com to learn more. There's a really great piece of content that's also on Inspired Insider. That's the 5 types of episodes every podcast should be creating. So you can check that episode out as well. So without further ado, Susan MacNicol has 25 plus years of experience in marketing communications. She started her full service marketing firm, as I mentioned, Strategic and Creative Marketing Inc. back in 2001. She has served everywhere from enterprise organizations, the small business market, as well as several government agencies even. And her digital team serves on national advisory panels. She's going to go a little bit more in depth into this for both Facebook and LinkedIn corporate. And they receive ongoing direct training and campaign feedback from the media giants themselves. So she'll share some of the things that they've learned. Some of her past clients include Experian, Nielsen, Charter Business, Office Max, Ericsson, Charter Cable, Time Warner, Johnson & Johnson, and many, many more. Susan, thanks for joining me.
Thank you for having me. Very exciting.
Just start off and tell people a little bit about Strategic Creative and Marketing and what you do.
Yeah. So we are a full service marketing firm. And really what that means is that we can work with a client and start from the beginning with forming the strategy and the plan and really kind of nailing down who are you trying to reach? What are your key, your value proposition, your key selling points, determining your target markets, your segments, and then what is the messaging you need to be saying to each of those segments? And then what tactics are you going to use based on your budget, based on what you want to achieve? We develop all of that and then build out the tactics as well. So we're really considered full service. We have a lot of tools in our toolbox and we kind of look at what is the client trying to achieve? And then what is the best way and the most cost-effective way to do that? So that's what we do when we work with a client, take them from the start to finish on all of those different pieces.
Susan, Facebook called you one day. Why? What happened?
So kind of a fun story here. Actually, they called my director, digital, Tammy Locke, who is amazing. And they reached out because what happened, this was about 5.5 years ago when the platforms really started to change everything and monetize. If you put up a post in the old days, everybody could see it. Now, not so much. So they kind of clamped down on all of that and said, hey, here's a boost button. You've got to pay. You have to have paid ads to reach people and targeting. And so when all of that happened, we jumped in and started learning it very quickly. Like, how do you do these paid ads? What's effective? And the graphic and the audience build and all of that. So we started running campaigns for clients, and we got a call from Facebook corporate, and we thought, wait, is this a scam? Like, you can never even reach them. This is crazy. And they had reached out to us and said, look, we'd like to, we see your ads and how well they're doing on our platform, and we'd like to invite you to be on our national advisory panels. So now for about 5.5 years, we have been directly interacting with their reps. Tammy will do beta testing for them, and we'll do, we'll give feedback on different services. And they, in turn, are training my team ongoing on the latest, what's happening with the algorithms and what changes are really working well for the campaigns, whether it's graphics or put this word in instead of this word, it's going to work better. So they give us these types of tips, look at our campaigns. And so therefore, what that means is our clients will get a lot more for their money because our campaigns are highly effective in terms of reaching the people we need to reach, the engagement rates, the click rates, and then the cost per click tends to be very low.
Talk about, and you may not be touching this directly, but what is something that is stuck out of what they've shared with you as a company?
I mean, it's so interesting. Like, everything changes. Like, every month there's something changing. So you have to constantly be on top of it, which is, I guess, pretty much the world of marketing and digital marketing. But like recently, people may have noticed it too in the last few months, you'll see a lot of circles in any of the ads that are coming up. Everything is curves and circles in the imagery. So that's something that is like trending that we're seeing, that we were talking about with our rep recently. So just simple things like that. They'll talk about just the way the picture, the photo is aligned on the ad. Different things like that. That's where they'll give us kind of pointers, and they'll read the campaigns and sometimes take out a word or two and say, take this word out or add this word. It's going to resonate better with the algorithms and being pulled, because we're bidding for space basically when we're running these ads. So the ad has to be perfect and really. It has to meet all the parameters that they want. And when it does, then the systems will pull our ad and then feed it out to who we're targeting. So and sometimes if you do something wrong in your ad, you won't know it. The system and these companies, they don't tell you, there's too many words on your picture, on the photo part, or they don't tell you. So you don't know, you just know, well, it didn't do well. So by us hitting every single, check mark that they want, that enables us to make sure that our ads are really serving up very quickly and very effectively to get the results.
I want to get to why you started an agency, but let's go back, because you went from corporate to starting an agency. Let's go back to your corporate days and what you learned. And you worked at some big studios, including working on shows like Seinfeld. Take me back to the big studio days?
Yeah, that was super fun. Really in the start of my career. I'm from the Chicago area, but I moved out to Los Angeles. I wanted to work specifically in entertainment. And so I was able to get into Columbia Pictures, which was awesome. So the big corporate, starting on the film side and helping to launch, a lot of the big movies, working on exhibitor relations in that marketing group for several years. And then, the big films, say from the 90s, like City Slickers, Terminator 2 with Arnold Schwarzenegger, all of that super fun stuff. And then did that for several years, then moved over to the TV division, which was the TV syndication. And that is where we had things like, Designing Women and Married with Children. And then, of course, Seinfeld, which was just such a great program that we were able to work on and launch it into syndication. So I did that for a lot of years in the beginning, and then, had an opportunity to work overseas. Based in Italy, working in the Middle East for a satellite TV company, and then coming back and working in Denver for Stars Encore company, and then setting up my own company. And really just starting off doing, consulting work, just different projects, and did that for a lot of years, and started to also do some recruiting work, which was really interesting, and recruitment marketing, which was, big demand over the last couple of years for that. And really reaching talent and having a good story to share. So I did all of that. And then it was about 7 years ago where I turned this company into more of an agency and started to, add a team of people and really more clients that we could serve at one time. So it's been a long kind of a journey until like 7 years ago when I sort of changed the whole model.
Let's talk about the evolution of services. So kind of like consulting, then you add recruiting, then you add kind of a team and agency. Stick on the consulting piece for a second. Talk about what you were doing in when you had the consulting piece, and then we can move to kind of the recruiting piece.
Yeah. For the consulting, it was a lot of projects, similar to what we do now, where I would go in just sort of as a consultant on my own and help to develop campaigns, strategy, copy, positioning, and then build out tactics, working with designers that I knew. I've done a lot of like TV production, video production. So working on using all of those tools to really, work with companies like Ericsson, Adelphia, which was a big major cable company, years ago before it was taken over by Comcast. But a lot of those programs, I would just develop them, incentives, rewards programs for employees, marketing strategies, B2B. So a lot of that I would, work on just on my own on different projects. And then I started getting into working on recruiting projects and contracts. I started doing some work with Johnson & Johnson in recruiting of their pharmaceutical and medical device reps. So I really learned that whole recruiting area. And then started doing recruitment marketing work. So kind of blending the recruiting that I had learned about and the marketing to do recruitment marketing strategies. And that was really for companies like OfficeMax Corporate for the recruitment marketing. So
talk about that for a second.
Evolution.
The recruitment marketing piece. How does that work? What is entailed in that?
Well, it's if you think about it, it's everything that has to do with promoting your company, but not to sell your products or services, but to essentially sell your company to recruit the best employees. So if you think about that, it's okay, how do we position our company? Do we have a career page that talks about the careers, the opportunities, all the new initiatives we're working on, the benefits, the culture, why we're a great place to work? All of that information is geared towards bringing you the best talent for your team. So all of that is the employment branding, like what is your brand about in terms of working for you? So once that's established, then you want to get the word out. So you can do that, with a lot of different things. Like, again, using digital and social media, you can get jobs directly reaching people who are most likely to apply for those types of roles. So you're taking the jobs out to them instead of posting and hoping that they find the post and that they apply. So that's a lot of it. And just also having sort of a steady drumbeat of information going out, because what's really interesting is we did research on this, and, it's called the transparent job market right now, because what it means is candidates can really learn about your company through many different avenues before they even apply. So they'll have 8 to 12 touch points with a company before even filling out an application. So if you don't have your employees out there on social saying great stuff, and you don't have career pages, and you don't have good reviews on Glassdoor and all of that, you're going to see that you'll have very few applications. And you'll say, yeah, but nobody's even applying. But then you've got to kind of ask yourself, what are they seeing about us? What are they reading? Because they're going to check that out. And if they don't feel like there's a good story, a good environment, they won't even fill out the application.
So the first important piece is really getting those foundational pieces. You go over the foundational pieces first, make sure there's a really good career page, make sure there's benefits, culture, the content, the positioning's on point before you amplify it and actually start, starting to actually attract people to the site to apply.
Yeah, exactly. And we did a project about 1.5 years ago with a manufacturer in Ohio. And it was really interesting because, they had some positions that was so difficult to fill. And what we did first was come in and do some focus groups with the supervisory management group, and then with the, staff people, and to understand what drew them to the company. What do they like best? What's really great about working there? What would they tell a friend who was going to apply? So once we gathered all of that information, we built out for them an employment brand. So we really put together that career page that explained, who we are, what these jobs are like, what our environment is like. So people had something to really understand the company and not just a job listing out there. And so once we built this all out, And then we started running the ads, and we targeted the ads to reach individuals who would be most likely to apply to these types of roles within like a geographic area within 30 miles, say, of the manufacturing facility. They went from when they brought us in, they had 2 applications in June. A month later, after we developed all of this and started running our ads, they had 51 applications. So from 2 to 51. So it just shows, how powerful the employment branding can be. And then the digital marketing, that ties it all together.
Yeah, I love how you say that, because most of the time when I hear branding, we're thinking company branding, but the position and the way the employment brand is, it's obviously targeted a different audience, right? So
Right.
The employment brand is totally separate.
Yep, you're targeting candidates, like people who, the talent you want to bring in. And you have to really, they had some great things there. You think, well, it's a manufacturer. What are they going to say? Well, they had really interesting things like, great benefits right from the beginning. They had a very flat management organization. So people, on the floor would be interacting with the general managers. Like, that's very different. They had things like 4 days on, 4 days off. What does that mean? Extra free time with your family. So these are all of the pieces of information that we were able to glean out of the initial sort of focus groups, and then turn that into, these are some of the key features of your employment brand, of working for your organization. So that was really interesting to kind of discover all of that.
So from the consulting services evolution to the recruiting, which you're still, again, you kind of just add these things in,
Right.
and now it's kind of in the recruitment marketing piece, and then the agency piece. So I want to talk about, building a team and make a decision to build a team, because obviously you could have been like, kept doing what you're doing and just have a few key partners and just lean on them, but you decided to build a team. But before we get to that, you mentioned something about, through the consulting and the recruiting, you mentioned, you're strategizing on rewards and incentives. I'd love to hear what you have seen work for these companies from a rewards and incentive standpoint for staff.
So one of the things that really, makes a difference is that, if you're going to do an incentive program for your employees, like we had done this a lot when I was at Stars Encore, working with the distributors that we work with. For instance, I was at Stars Encore, and, we're up, selling against, say, HBO and Showtime back then. And so we're going into the call centers and getting these different, satellite TV companies, for instance, cable companies, to sell through our programming. So you want to, as they sell, they get entered to win, and you make it really fun and exciting. But what we really learned too is that you've got to have a lot of levels of rewards. You don't want to say, keep every time you sell, throw your name in, and one person's going to win one trip at the end of the year. Like, people get disincentivized because they're like, oh, forget it. What are the chances? So what I feel like I've really learned is have little mini incentives, little tiny gifts and rewards at different levels, so that people feel engaged and they're like, oh my gosh, I just won this little, dinner out for the night or whatever. So you have all these little levels that you want to add in, and then have leading up to the bigger prizes and the bigger things. So I think that's one way to really look at incentive programs. And we're doing a lot of work right now with, because our digital targeting and ads are so effective, we now have been getting calls from market research firms. And what they're doing is requesting that we find, using our digital tools, we find specific respondents for their interview, for their focus groups, their in-depth interviews. So for instance, and really hard to find people too sometimes, like they wanted, 50 women who just had babies in certain zip codes of Philadelphia. So our ads have to be really targeted to reach them. So, that's the kind of the targeting and stuff that we're able to do. And now we're getting that type of a request also, to find these really hard to find individuals for market researchers. And that's really kind of fun, interesting area to be in.
I love that. Talk about the mini incentives. What are other things that people have done? So you mentioned, okay, it could be, because anyone listening could maybe do some of this with their staff.
Yeah.
So a night out. What are some other mini incentives that you found?
You could do like electronics, do a night out, do a gift card for something, do an event, an activity, that would be fun to attend something, a festival or something like that. But you're giving out like those tickets, say after 1 month, right? And maybe you're going to give out 5 different awards. So the perception is, hey, I have a real chance of winning this, and that's what you want to get across. So maybe you have those types of little mini incentives. And then a bigger incentive is, everyone has a chance to win the trip to Hawaii or whatever you want to put out there. So that's how you want to structure something like that, and make sure that, and other ways to engage everybody. Like when you kick off the program, do a pizza party, like do a whole fun kickoff event. So for a while, like when I was with Stars Encore years ago, I was going from, city to city and literally hosting big parties and events and pizza parties and that kind of thing, just to kind of get people excited about the new incentive program and what we were offering. So that's a really important piece too. Because what's interesting to me a lot of times is you'll talk to people in corporate and they'll say, oh yeah, we have this incentive program. And we see this a lot actually for recruiting, where we'll talk to, decision makers in like the HR side. And they'll say, oh yeah, we have a referral program, for our employees. If they refer somebody, they get $1,500. And they're like, oh yeah, we have that. But when you go and talk to the employees, nobody knows about it. So they may have it in place, but again, now that's internal marketing and communications, right? You've got to get it out there, put it in, nowadays, of course, emails and information that goes out to the employees. But, even if you have like a facility where people come in, you want it in a poster, you want it, hanging up, you want it promoted in the break room, that kind of thing, so that people know that, oh, wow, we have a employee referral program here. That's great. People sit and develop these things. But if nobody knows about it, it does zero for that company.
Susan, I don't know if it was you or someone else, but I'm wondering if you have any software that you like or you have heard of people helping manage these incentive programs. Also, I'm not sure if you were the one who kind of compared it to reward points or airline miles. What are there any softwares or things that people should look at that would help them, give them ideas or help them manage it? So it's not just one person handing these out, but like maybe collectively the staff is helping, give incentives and bonuses out to each other.
Yeah. I mean, well, as far as software, I mean, there's full-on companies who do nothing but, rewards programs and that kind of thing. For the market research side, there's several different companies that are out there who implement these types of reward programs where you can just go in and enter the information and they're sending out the actual, rewards or, whatever incentive for people who do like market research. And so there's, one in particular is called Neocurrency that we're working with now. So that's one of them. But I mean, there's so many that do strictly these kinds of rewards programs. I never got specifically into going and offering services in that area, but through the years, I've been pulled in to develop those. So that's where, a lot of my background, again, from corporate comes into play.
So, going from the consulting to the recruiting to combining it with the agency, what made you decide to build a team around it?
Yeah, I just felt like I really want to do something different here. I'm kind of doing the same thing and I really want to, I've had this agency for so long, this company for so long. And I thought, what if I really just focus on it and really just build it instead of just sort of doing some projects here and there, just change this. So the idea, and actually I went to a conference all for small businesses and it really kind of inspired me to think about what could I turn this into? So then I decided, I am going to build this and start growing it. So I started giving it a whole new boost of energy. And that's when I brought in Tammy. And then she and I have really built it from there. And then we started adding more staff people on the digital side. And then I added another ops person sort of on like my side of the business. Now I'm going to be adding in a sales rep. So that's going to be a new thing because we've been doing, really all of the sales. So that'll be interesting. So we've just kind of keep, growing it. And I just thought it would be interesting and really give it a shot of energy, after so many years just doing like project work,
Who are ideal clients for you? You mentioned, manufacturers, you'll do, a variety of services, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
We mentioned manufacturers, but you also work with I think from an economic development standpoint.
Yep. That's a big area for us right now. We've loved working in it. We've been doing a lot of work. We've had contracts with state of Illinois, contracts with state of Connecticut. The Illinois ones right now are focused on work share And sort of, it's all kind of on the side of where the government is partnering with businesses. So if there's a slowdown, WorkShare is a new program that allows the government to team with businesses. So if there's a slowdown, the employer can cut back the hours for their staff people. And then the unemployment insurance can actually kick in and help to supplement some of that. So it's really a neat partnership. What it does is it allows businesses to retain that talent so that if there's a slowdown, they don't have to let go of people. Then when business picks up, they've got to find people and retrain them. It just takes forever. So this allows it helps businesses, and it helps IDES, the unemployment group, to be able to use those funds without paying somebody completely for a whole 100% being laid off. And so it's a really neat program that's offered through federally, Department of Labor. And so it's coming to Illinois. So we've been brought in to do all the marketing to promote this. And then another program is the apprenticeship program. And that is helping the Illinois apprenticeship programs to just be more widely known by the employers to implement these programs. And then by people, the workers who want to be an apprentice and kind of learn a career and get paid and get into a whole new career. It's a fantastic program. So these are two that we're working with right now. And on the economic development side, we did a lot of work with Invest Aurora. And that is the economic development group in the city of Aurora, which is right near Chicago. It's second largest city in Illinois. So for them, for instance, it was 3 campaigns that we developed. We had to kind of really refine this and figure out what do they want to achieve? What are the goals? So what we came up with was 3 campaigns. One to reach existing businesses, because they wanted to help develop those relationships. One to reach new businesses, potentially to come in, open another location in Aurora, Illinois. And then the third sort of prong of the campaign was the local community support to increase awareness of new businesses, new restaurants, ribbon cuttings, all of that. So really 3 different campaigns is what we implemented, and we saw amazing results. I know in just the first year, they booked over 300 consultation sessions with existing businesses throughout Aurora, and they had 44 requests for more information from new potential businesses moving into the region. So great results. A lot of their, for instance, some of the, again, with our ads being so effective, in 1 month, we were bringing over 350 clicks to their website for more information in the first month. And that's up from like 40. They would have 40, 45 clicks. And then just, huge numbers to bring that awareness up of this organization that's there to help businesses. So that's something we want to continue doing, working with more economic development organizations across the country. And again, we've done a lot with workforce development and education, K through 12, as well as higher ed, working with Illinois State University, for instance. So those are kind of the key areas we work in. And then we've done a lot with the supply chain industry, actually, with the technology in supply chain. So that's another area we've been doing a lot of work, working with resellers in that arena.
I want to get into the supply chain technology for a second, but with the economic development, what are the positions that people are at that are typically contacting you?
You'll have a lot of times, it depends on the city or the county or the state, whatever group it is. You might have like someone who'll be a director of marketing if it's a larger organization, or it might be the president of economic development or vice president of economic development. And that would be, sometimes the people who reach out to us. It depends on the size of the company, and that's who we would work with. And, coming in, trying to understand their needs, their business goals, and then developing that plan and that strategy for them, and then all the tactics.
Talk about, supply chain technology, what that is, and then what are the things that you do?
Yeah, so really interesting. We kind of got into this just a couple of years ago, working with a major OEM called Zebra Technologies, and they produce a lot of these different technology, tools for the warehouses and for supply chain across the globe, really. And some of these would be like, for instance, RFID, which is like a little reader. You see it sometimes, for instance, if you're out at a store and they're scanning boxes, that handheld control is like an RFID reader. And then they have what they call, there's tablets that are rugged tablets. So these are computers that a lot of the warehouse workers would be using. So if it's dropped or it falls or whatever, it doesn't break.
They need to track it too.
Yeah. And then you can track everything. And then the other thing, which is really neat too, is they have these fixed industrial scanning. systems. So, a lot of those you can have them at the doors of your warehouse, and they literally can read all of the barcodes of all of the boxes coming in on trucks. I mean, it's just amazing. So instead of you sitting there and looking at each one and with your clipboard like the old days, these systems just pull in the information, and you've got your everything on computer. So you can track. It allows you to know where are the assets that I have, what's going out, what's coming in, what's being returned from customers. Phenomenal technology that they've put together, and then that we have been brought in to help their partners to market into the warehouses. So they have resellers. The structure is like these OEMs, original equipment manufacturers. They work with resellers, and the resellers, are all over the country, and they're the ones who actually use their equipment, help sell it in to the warehouses, and then they go and do the IT solutions and the setup, so everything is working. So that's who we've been working with, and what we'll do is help them to try to reach the warehouse ops people, IT people, heads of warehouse technology and logistics and all of those decision makers. That's who we're trying to reach, to say, hey, check out this new equipment and how we can help you be more efficient. So that's the marketing. We've done a lot of LinkedIn ads, targeted ads. We have a software tool that we, as a proprietary tool that we license, and it allows us to quickly reach dozens and dozens of the right people through LinkedIn. So building those connections that way, email campaigns, we've done landing page revisions, videos. So a lot of different tools, again, to help them to get the word out about what they offer and why it'll help in the supply chain area.
Love it. Susan, I have one last question, but I want to point people to your website. People can check out scmarketinginc.com. I'm going to pull it up on the screen here so people can check it out. And, basically the last question you can see here, we're at her website. You can learn more. They have a lot of great information here. The last question I have is really, it starts with the strategy, right? And we mentioned that's kind of where you cut your teeth with all these big companies, and then what you do with the agency on the consulting side. I'd love to hear, what are some of the biggest mistakes that when you're coming in, because you're doing a lot of different industries, a lot of different campaigns, that people are making from the strategy side of things with their company?
Well, I think one of the biggest mistakes is basically not having one. There are so many companies that kind of jump in and go, hey, let's do some Facebook ads. Hey, we want some LinkedIn ads. And that's literally where they want to start. And it's like, well, hold on a second, let's step back. Because what they really have to do, we do a whole discovery session with a client when we get started to really delve into what are the business goals, then how can the marketing support those business goals? And then really look at, who are you trying to reach, right? And what's unique about your product or service? How do we get that out there? And for instance, with digital, it always works best when you're saying one message to one particular target. So if you're going to have a message out there for women, well, you might have a separate one for younger women, and then a different ad with a different message for, middle-aged women, or for moms or grandmas. So each, little segment has to be spoken to in their own terms so that it resonates with them. And some of the biggest mistakes are that people don't do the strategy and planning first, and they don't break up into segments. And it's so funny because we'll talk to them, well, who are you trying to reach? Who could really use your product or your service? Everybody can. And we're like, no, that's not correct. You need to have a segment or a target. Give us a sense of that. So we kind of figure that all out. But that's the most important part in the strategy. And I said, when you boil marketing down, it's essentially, who are you reaching? What are you saying? It's those are the two things it boils down to. Who are you reaching? What are you saying? And everything else, you layer it on from there. And that gets you into a really, strong marketing strategy. And you've got to have it before you go out there, or you waste a lot of money if you don't have that in order before you start building out tactics.
Yeah. And I love what you said there, and you live this, because when you were talking about the market research firms and, or the manufacturing, actually with the jobs, you would have a focus group and actually ask, it's not something I would have thought of. Like, okay, here's the job. We got to start marketing it. But you would talk to the staff and find out what's unique about the company and get exactly how to position it. And that's basically what you're doing with all the campaigns too. And the one message, the one target, and really speaking to that one person so it resonates with them. So Susan, thank you. Everyone check out scmarketinginc.com to learn more and more episodes of the podcast. And Susan, thank you so much.
Thank you, Jeremy. Thanks so much.
What I got, you can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sailing right now. I feel like $100 grand.